Well, hello, Nats fans, and welcome to another edition of the DoDCast Postgame Show. I'm Drew Douglas, and I'll be your host for tonight. And boy, what an upsetting game tonight was. The Nationals lost the game 2-1 in Max Scherzer's return from the hamstring issue, and just what a frustrating game as they now fall behind in the series 2-1. But I have the great pleasure of being joined tonight by both Ricky Keeler and Ron Juckett. And how are you guys doing tonight?
We were better about an hour ago.
That's understandable.
And of course, as Ricky knows, and the Red Sox are out too. So Keeler's the only one left with a half reason to be happy by the time the night's over. That and Chris Lacey.
That could change by 11 o'clock.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, baseball do that to you.
What did I write over the weekend? Baseball is a cruel mistress that wears a hockey jersey.
Yeah. All right, so we'll get into the lines a little bit from tonight's game. The Nationals, they did score a run, but they only managed to muster up 3 hits. So Ryan Zimmerman went 1 for 4 as he continues to have a big series against the Cubs. Jason Worth went 1 for 3, put together a few good at-bats, seeing a lot of pitches and finding ways on base, although he couldn't quite get the job done at the end of the game to extend the game to Adam Lind. And Michael Taylor went 1 for 3. That was all it was for the offense. Trey Turner continued to struggle, going 0 for 4 with a strikeout. Although he did have what appeared to be a hit before Ben Zobrist made a great diving play. Bryce Harper went 0 for 3 with 2 strikeouts, including a rematch against Carl Edwards in the 8th inning. And Anthony Rendon went 1 for 4. Murphy went 0 for 4, although he did score a run. And Wieters went 0 for 3. So just Trey Turner has really continued to struggle throughout this whole series. He's now 0 for 12, I believe it is, with a ton of strikeouts. What have you guys seen from him, and do you think he'll be able to improve going tomorrow and in a possible Game 5?
Well, I think if there is a Game 5, he has to. I mean, you can take some solace out of the fact that the last ball he hit the 8th inning was absolutely stung and just, good Cubs defense. But he has to be able to set the table. I mean, look, the only really productive inning of this entire series started because Adam Lind started off with that single. And so you can't be doing that. I mean, let's tip our hats to both teams' pitching staffs. The pitching in this series has been everything that the other 3 have not. But you have to work counts. If you can't hit, then make them pitch. He's swinging too early in counts. He's not putting any pressure on, and you can't give the Cubs even that much wiggle room.
No, not at all. And it comes down to this simple point. If Trey Turner does not get a hit tomorrow, the Nats are out. I mean, you can tell this offense does nothing when he does nothing. And he's only bunted a couple of times this season. He's not going to bunt. It's not his game. And somebody needs to, in that coaching staff, needs to tell him to bunt, because that's the way he's going to get on base. He's pressing for everything. He's chasing away. He's taking pitches in the strike zone. He has no idea what pitches are coming right now. And we've had this conversation. So many of you guys on Twitter are saying, bench Jason Worth. If you bench Jason Worth, then you should bench Trey Turner, because he's not doing anything to help the team right now. And even his defense slipped because luckily the Nats didn't give up a run, but his throw to first base got away from Zimmerman. Although you can say Zim should have made that play, but Rizzo's probably going to beat it out anyway.
Jason Worth has done exactly everything that you expected him to do. He makes pitchers work. Doesn't get cheap at bats. He may not get on a lot, but right now no one's getting on. But he's at least, Ricky usually can pull out the number of how many pitches he sees on a given night. But he's done what you expected him to do. Turner's been okay defensively. The jump throws, I think, are going to cost the Nats at some point. Hopefully, it's not this season. Maybe tomorrow is when you set him down and give Defoe a chance. You play Worth, and you sub for him in the 7th. But
Turner saw 20 pitches. Worth saw a team high 21.
So Turner saw 20 pitches.
20 pitches and 4 at bats. Worth saw 21 and 4 at bats with a walk.
It's good to hear that Turner saw so many pitches, because usually at the leadoff spot where you'd like to have guys see pitches, he's up there just a few pitches and out. So at least today he was seeing pitches, but still just see him striking out so much. And maybe that's where all the pitches are coming from, just striking out a lot. But
I'm stunned to hear he saw 20 pitches. So that's 5 in at bat, which is an improvement. But as Ricky said, drop one. Put the pressure on the Cubs from the get-go. And you remember, Ricky remembers this, when the Royals and the Mets played in the World Series a couple of years ago. Didn't one of those games start like a bunt home run or something like that?
No, I think that was Alcides Escobar inside the park.
Inside the Parker, but he also started a game at Citi Field with a bunt single. You know, put the pressure on the home team to do their job. And right now, the only thing Trey Turner's pressuring is your blood pressure.
Yeah, it certainly has been rough to watch. And with this Nationals offense struggling, other than really the 8th inning in Game 2, he needs to go up there and find a way to get on base, and maybe steal a base, get a ground ball to the right side and get him over, and then get him in. Because right now they're really not hitting, and they need to manufacture some runs. But without him getting on and without him being the spark plug that he's capable of being, the Nationals offense has really struggled. And their one run today, they scored because of the Kyle Schwarber error, then a clutch hit from Ryan Zimmerman. You can't take that away from him. But the inning really should have been over, as Kyle Schwarber should have caught that ball in left field.
The Cubs gave the Nats 4 errors today, and they only scored 1.
You can look back at that 3rd inning where you get a man on second because the Michael Teo error, and you hate to blame Max Scherzer, and we'll get into him, how great he was today. Got to get the bunt down. You got to get Teo over to third. And then that error that Zobrist makes on Harper makes it 1-0. You hate to play revisionist history, but especially in baseball, you never know how bats will change. But they do not do a good job of stealing, and it's largely because of Trey. Trey's not getting on base. They're not able to steal. They're not able to play small ball because nobody else in this team can play small ball.
And give the Cubs a lot of credit. They knew exactly how to pitch Bryce Harper today. They got him to chase and chase and chase and chase and chase. I mean, we talked about it, Ricky, on Saturday. Why Carl Edwards would hang a curveball on a 3-1 count is beyond me, but there was none of that today. Every time he swung, he was swinging it there. I mean, and it makes it easier to game plan against Harper when Turner's not pressuring you to steal a base.
You have to throw fastballs to Harper until he can actually get to one. I methat that's really the issue. Bryce is not getting the fastballs.
So catch up a little bit in the chat here. Seth Ross said that this loss is even worse because the Cubs had 4 errors and the Nationals also blew their chance to clinch in the Cubs' face. So, yeah, it would have been nice to clinch the series, but if you win tomorrow, you get a chance to win your first postseason series at Nationals Park in front of the home crowd. So that would certainly be cool. And Seth also said start Robles in the leadoff position.
No.
Yeah.
No. Robles, I'm not convinced that Robles is a big league hitter yet. His big league speed and big league defense. But you're gonna stick someone who's had 15 at bats above Double-A leading off in an elimination game? No.
It's a bad spot to put that kid in who's going to be in the fall league either this weekend or whenever the postseason ends. He's going to get his at-bats there. To be honest, maybe the best situation if you want to take Trey out of the leadoff spot is to hit Michael Taylor. I mean, he's been their most consistent player. He's drawing at-bats. He's hitting the ball hard. He's playing great defense. I mean, that might be the guy that you can get on base, and then he can steal bases.
Yeah, I mean, the key is you've got to pressure the Cubs right from the get-go. You have to have someone on there that will cause that concentration to get away from Harper for just a second. You know how quickly one mistake can be turned into multiple runs. That's what happened Saturday. And right now, the Nats haven't been able to do that.
And also in the chat, Judah Joker said he knows Ricky disagrees, but there's no good reason for Max Scherzer to come in to start the 7th inning.
No, I was that Judo. Judo, I agree. I'm the one who said Scherzer couldn't come out for the. Maybe we got crossed up on Twitter. I said, at least in the chat with these guys, I thought Max after the 6th was done. He's at 90 pitches. The fatigue was setting in. His fastball was up. That's a spot where you go to the law firm that's gotten you there for the whole second half. Scherzer was only supposed to give you 100. To me, 90 would have been okay, and the fear was leaving a fastball up, and he left the fastball up to Zobrist for a double.
I was fine leaving a minute until they got a base runner, but because the game score situation was the way it is, I mean, the margin of error there is none. I was worried when Dusty came to take him out that Scherzer was going to convince him. We all expressed relief when Dusty said, no, you're coming out, because I thought Scherzer was going to talk himself into that one more batter, and that's when you really start to worry. But, as much as I like Sammy Solis in the matchup, it's Kinsler time at that point.
Yeah, the national media that's on Twitter, it's complaining about Max coming out. Can we remember that Max had a hamstring injury and probably a more worse hamstring injury than Dusty and the Nats let on, and he still threw 6 no-hit innings against a really good offense? I mean, that shouldn't get lost in the conversation. Ron and I were here after Game 2, and we did not expect Max to be this good.
No, not at all.
That's definitely something that – was it similar to Game 5 last year? It's not Max's fault. He did everything he could have did today. So Dusty, I know people don't like him. I get why people don't like him. He was in a lose-lose situation. You're going to piss off the people that want Max in. You're going to piss off the people that want the reliever in. It just was maybe the one thing you can hurt him for. And I was with Dusty, so maybe I was wrong. Bring in Perez to face Rizzo. And even I think someone tweeted, Rizzo said on TBS that he was surprised he got pitched to.
Yeah, it's just the margin is just so slim in these games that in a one-run game, any mistake gets magnified. And if Rizzo could have easily just leaned into a pitch and gotten hit too. He's
good at that.
Yeah, well, that's what he's supposed to be. You got to go with the best, even if it's not in an ideal situation. And the fact that we did not see Madsen or Doolittle, look, now you're in a situation where you can't lose again until you win 2 more. If they win the 2 more, then you can blow Game 1 with probably the Dodgers. But the backs are against the wall again, and This is not the whole Buck Showalter leaving Zach Britton in the bullpen as the Blue Jays torch it, which is what happened last year. But everyone had a day off. There should have only been three pitchers, bullpen pitchers available until the 10th inning. It should have been Kinsler, Madsen, and Doolittle.
Here's the problem, and I understand where Ron's going with that. The problem they had was if Tanner Roark had to throw in extra innings, that would have made Steven Strasburg have to throw and start the game on short rest tomorrow, which they don't want to do. He's never done it before. I think you will see him at some point tomorrow night out of the bullpen. I think they have to. But if you pitch Madsen in that situation and the game is still tied, I mean, you have to somewhat look ahead in a 1-1 game. But I think in that spot, you're asking Alberts to throw 3 or 4 innings because then you're trying really hard not to use Roark. And that, I think, created the effect of not using Madsen. To me, it was the game situation kind of got to Dusty there, but it's not a fireable offense to me, at least.
And I fully understand where you're coming from with that, but
it doesn't look good. I agree with you. It doesn't look good at all.
All right, so back in the chat, try to catch up a little bit here. Judah Joker also pointed out, he said, Michael A. Taylor is the only person hitting consistently well, and he's in the 8th position. And he goes on to say that he thinks Taylor should be batting earlier, but he doesn't know if he can trust him in the leadoff spot just yet. And, yeah, I agree. I think he should be moved up, especially with Wieters hasn't done too much. I think he'd definitely be moved ahead of Wieters. But then if Wieters gets on, you have your pitcher bunting Wieters over who's really slow. You have to get nearly perfect bunt at that point. So I understand the logic with keeping Taylor in the 8-hole, but yeah, like you also said, I don't know if I would put him leadoff, but you really need Trey Turner to improve quickly.
And Dusty's not one to shake up the lineup. He even said it today. I mean, the logical thing would have been to hit Howie Kendrick for Jason Worth because Kendrick was 5 for 10 against Quintana, but he said, I want to keep these players here. I want to get them going in their spot. He can't do that anymore. He even said after Game 1 he thought about making changes. In an elimination game, you have to make these changes. I know he trusts his veterans, and I'm not saying bench Worth, but I'm saying, like, you got to look at who's making strides and who's not. The only issue, like I mentioned earlier, I think if you sit Worth, you have to sit Trey. Because sitting one and not sitting the other can create really bad effects in that locker room. Just ask the Yankees a long time ago when A-Rod hit 8th in that ALDS. You could create really bad vibes in a locker room that is tense, that is tight, and doesn't know how to fix it right now because they've tried every strategy and it hasn't worked.
Yeah, I don't know if Taylor is a good leadoff hitter. He's done it once or twice this year. But, if your best hitter has a pitcher hitting behind them, then we have problems because you're not going to go out there and Johnny Holstaff game 4. Tanner Roark is going to get an at-bat, maybe 2, depending on how well he pitches. So if your best hitter needs to be bunted along, and we know how bad this team is in bunting, maybe for the one game you do it and see how it works. Maybe Turner responds down at the bottom of the lineup, hitting 7th, because Weeder shouldn't be hitting above anybody. But this is the time to. I mean, we've seen Dusty roll out some lineups that I'm surprised Ricky hasn't wearing a toupee, because some of those lineups will make Ricky pull his hair out. But I mean, what are you gonna do if you lose? Your season's over anyway. You might as well go down fighting.
What's your leash, guys, on Roark tomorrow? Because we saw it in the other game today. Houston's going to Justin Verlander in the 5th. You have Chris Sale pitching in the bullpen for Boston today and was excellent up until the home run.
Yes.
At what point, and I think Roark is only going to get 5 at the most, I think Dusty has no choice tomorrow. And if you get to a game 5, you have Gio on short rest, you have Gio on full rest, and you have Max ready to take him over. There is no excuse why Steven Strasburg should not get in this game tomorrow.
Yeah, and that's kind of the same situation that they had in 2014, where they had where they were playing the Giants in the NLDS, and they had Strasburg ready to go in the bullpen, and he never came in. And everyone was talking about that for a long time. Matt Williams should have brought in Strasburg. So, yeah, I agree. I think if Roark starts to struggle, the season's on the line. With the way Strasburg pitched in Game 1, I think you have to come with him out of the bullpen to try to preserve the season.
I think if they get multiple runs, I think one run you kind of have to leave him in. But if it gets 2-0 early, you have no choice, just because the offense can't hit, and you have to put yourself in the best position to win. There can't be a Game 5 unless you win a Game 4. And as much apprehension as you might have with a Gio pitching starting a Game 5, look, it's going to be 5 innings and 3 runs, just like it was in Game 2, and that's the game that they won. So, yeah, if that means you pitch Gio on normal rest, don't forget, because there's the off days, 2 off days built in there, then that's what you have to do. You have to see Strasburg ready to go tomorrow. And look, even Justin Verlander pitched today for Houston, and both Sale and Verlander went multiple innings. And it just happened to work for Houston. You got to think, whoever gets the Astros out of the Cleveland or New York got to be chomping at the bit now. But yeah, you tomorrow is Game 5, and if you survive the first Game 5, then you go play the other Game 5. But yeah, all stops out tomorrow. Everyone's available except for Scherzer.
Dusty had a couple quotes that he said. This from Dan Coco at Mass, and they continue to get the clutch hits, and we haven't, but we will. I love how Dusty continues to stay confident in all this. I think every fan is not confident that they're going to get the clutch hits. He also said the decision to take Scherzer out was very difficult, but we thought Max had enough. And at 98 pitches, you saw Dusty. Max, I think, really tried to stay in that game, and that's how big a gamer he is, and he's earned all that money. But at some point, for the better team, you take him out, and I think Madden played it perfectly. You got a guy in Almora on the bench who's a 360 hitter at home, who's hit 340, at least I think in September was the numbers I wrote up this morning. I wrote about how he'd be an X factor for this game. He went with the left-right. It backfired. You could have put Kinsler in for Schwarber, but that's why Joe Madden's the better manager, and Joe Madden's aggressive moves, other than putting Strope in against Zimmerman, which I didn't understand in the 6th, usually it'll help Madden in the long run.
One of the things that they're going to have to address whenever the offseason comes is their lack of ability to if you note all season, I mean, we've been through the stats, it's 6.5 if they win, and it's less than 3 if they lose, is that they all come together in bunches. There's no steady production throughout the game. It's been this way the whole year. You either see them pop 4 or 5 up. It might happen a couple times a day, and then you'll see, the Sahara Desert for the next 4 innings. There's nothing that happens. Whether it's a hitting change, coaching change philosophy that needs to happen or whatever. It's not just that they're relying on the home run. I mean, it really is, even if it's 2 doubles back to back, it's feast or famine the entire way. It's a tremendous attack, but it's not very consistent.
Yeah, and I think this is probably where they're really missing a guy like Adam Eaton. And Michael Taylor's done a phenomenal job in his opportunity this year, and he's played a great defensive center field, but he's not really a leadoff hitter. And when you have Trey Turner struggling like this, I think it would definitely be beneficial to have Adam Eaton leading off and just getting something going, and maybe move Turner down to the bottom of the lineup. Then you could do something like Turner in the 9-hole, or but I don't know. It's just really I think they definitely miss Adam Eaton right now, just not being able to manufacture runs.
I think Zuckerman pretty much said the same thing over the weekend. I think at the game that you were at, it's like I wasn't worried. He said pretty much I wasn't worried about Eaton not being there for the regular season, but I figured it would hurt in the playoffs, and both of you have hit on that. Turner's Tim Raines if he wants to be, as far as his ability to hit for extra base hits and his ability to steal bases. But in the playoffs the last 2 years, he's Tim Raines Jr.
And I don't think Bryce Harper's proven to be a two-hitter. I know Judge does it. I know Stanton does it. I know a lot of the power hitters do it. Bryce Harper's job in this lineup is to score runs. If Trey Turner's not getting them in a position to score runs, then let's move Bryce Harper down. Let's put Worth, who's seeing the ball well, in the 2-hole. Or if, let's say, you want to hit Kendrick, let's put Kendrick in the 2-hole. You need your run producers in the middle of the lineup. I don't want to see Harper hit second. I think it's been a bad move to hit Harper second just to get him at bats. This is the playoffs. You need to get him in the spots that he succeeds in. He was not a two-hitter for the entire year, and now he's a two-hitter for a week. I really don't get it at all.
I'll agree with that. He's there to produce runs, not to be a table setter. He cleans the table, and you can't really clean the table at 2. There isn't a Christian Yelich and Marcell Ozuna right there behind him. At least he's not there to protect them. He's the one that needs to be protected. And they're not, and if we've kind of talked about this the entire show, if Turner is not going to protect him, then it really doesn't matter, then he's an absolutely useless at 2.
So back in the chat, Judah Joker said he honestly thinks the Nats are going to lose tomorrow, and they'll get the clutch hits. It might be next season, but they'll get them. So.
That's what really the thing is that's going to help the Cubs. They can have a longer leash with Arrieta because they won today. We don't know how healthy Jake Arrieta is, but he says he's 100%. John Lackey would be the one that have to come in for Arrieta, and Lackey struggled against the Nats all season long. So they can afford to have a longer leash, and plus, you now put yourself in a position where you have to go to a Game 5 if you win, and you have the 2 guys that you could not hit the first 2 games that will probably pitch in that game, and Kyle Hendricks and John Lester, who are both big game pitchers.
Yeah, and, Drew, Ricky, and I talked about this a bit on Saturday. I'm not sure if it was on the air or if it was in between things. It may be that the Nats need to do a postseason when they're not the home team for any deciding games. Take some of the pressure off, because I think one of the things about if there is a Game 5 of the series, the Nats play extremely tight and uncomfortable at home. They have all year. I don't understand it, because the fans want to cheer, but this whole they need to can't think about what happened in the past. We talked a bit about curses. I mean, do you honestly sit there and think that the Nats can't win a playoff game because Chip Lowmiller missed a field goal in 1996? Come on. Seriously? Because there are people who think that. But there is something about playing at home that terrifies this ball club. And I don't maybe you two can answer that, because I don't really know what it is.
I hope Sim Alex is listening, and he had a great tweet during the game. You guys are acting like what Cubs fans used to act like, where they always worried about what was going wrong, what's going to happen now, who's going to do this. This is a different team. It's like Ron said, stop worrying about if they're going to lose because the Capitals can't win a second round or if the Wizards can't win a second round. Give this team a chance to win. And that's why even if they went back to Game 5, everybody would be tense and on their pins and needles rather than cheering as loud as possible. I mean, Ron and I do the Twitter, and we're not from the fan base. I'm sorry if we don't get it, because maybe we don't. But
I get a little more. I get a little more because I grew up in New England,
right?
And I remember after when the Red Sox were way ahead in Game 7 in 2004, the thought was, oh my God, we're going to beat the Yankees. No, it's how are we blowing this one? Because that's how every other season had ended before. I do understand that.
Mm-hmm.
But now that I've seen both sides of this, we have the Red Sox. I've seen the Red Sox win multiple world championships. I covered the last one in 2013. You realize that once you break down that one barrier, and I think for the Nats it is getting past the National League Divisional Series, it gets easier after that. Once you realize it can be done, it will get done. This is a team that does not have very high turnover in players. And so who's still around from 2012? Jason Worth, Bryce Harper, Ryan Zimmerman. I mean, they're
a 97-win team that has the most wins on the road of any team in the National League. So that's really what you have to go off of tomorrow.
I mean, Drew, you're the one that grew up down there. What do you think it is?
I don't know. I think it really it goes back to 2012, and now I don't know if this team is thinking it, that they just can't get past the NLDS. I know Ryan Zimmerman, I read a quote from him after Game 2 where he was saying, like, they asked him, well, what do you guys think about you haven't made it past the NLDS? And he said, we don't want to hear that because this is a new team with new players, and the same players are having better years than they have in the past. And so this team, while it is obviously the same Nationals, it's a different team that blew that Game 5 in 2012 and lost the series to the Giants 2014, and even lost the series to Dodgers last year because Zimmerman couldn't hit water if he fell out of a boat last year, and now he's an MVP candidate. So I don't know if it relates back to these previous series where they've never made it out of the NLDS or what it is, but it's just been so frustrating to watch ever since they first made the postseason in 2012.
I think that's the way it is for the fans.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, like I said, I've seen both sides of this. I've covered teams and rooted for teams that have done both these things. I remember talking with an older friend of mine after. I just bring this up not to pick on Ricky, but that was the turning point of the Red Sox franchise was 2004, and he said, "Oh, you finally beat the Yankees," and I turned to him and said, "I really could care less." It's not the words I used. About the blankety blank Yankees. I've been to a World Series before. This is the prize that the Cardinals is what I wanted, and that change, and the fact that they steamrolled St. Louis changed everything, changed the whole fan base. I mean, Boston is now pretty much insufferable since we won that World Series. But I don't know what that moment of zen is going to be for the Nats. But I know for the fans, especially if there is a Game 5, I mean, that's all they're thinking about is how are we blowing this? And it does reflect to how the players treat it.
And if the players think like that, then maybe I don't know, I've talked about this. I don't know how they go about it, but then there has to be a shakeup because you can't keep having players think like that. In these kinds of situations, I get it, they're human, but they can't be thinking what goes wrong is going to affect the game. I mean, they got to just take it one inning at a time, and they're in a division where they could have some turnover and still win the division. I mean, maybe you do need some form of shakeup and not be the manager because it seems like it's the players. They've replaced the manager 3 times.
I said that Saturday on Twitter. I mean, so, if Dusty's a problem, so was it Davey Johnson and Matt Williams as well? And someone responded, well, 2 managers and Matt Williams. But, it doesn't seem to be that. And as much as we kind of get on Dusty, deservedly so, for not being a grand chess tactician like Joe Madden, there's no one that's a better long-term manager than Dusty Baker. I mean, 10 90-win seasons kind of proves he can navigate you through pretty much anything except for the playoffs.
Jason Word said to Coco, if we get this series back to DC, I like our chances.
I don't know, 1-game playoff, it's every man for itself. But so again, I ask you, Drew, because you're the one that is grown up in this environment. I mean, what do you think needs to be different?
I don't know. Like you said, I don't think it's the manager because you said they've had 3 different managers, but I don't even know if you need a shakeup. I think the core of this team is really good. Obviously, I don't know if Bryce Harper will be back after next season, but I think they have a strong core. They got a lot of young guys coming up, and even Victor Robles is coming through. He hasn't quite reached the big leagues yet, I guess. I know he is there, but he isn't playing a big role right now. But I don't know. I think they just need to win a series and then hopefully go on from there and eventually get to the World Series, win a World Series. But, yeah, I don't know. I think if they do win tomorrow and they come back to D.C. for Game 5, I do like their chances. Like Worth said, obviously, if Strasburg pitches tomorrow, then you're going to have Gio Gonzalez. And he has pitched a Game 5 in D.C. before. Back in 2012, he was a starter because that was the year of the Strasburg shutdown. And he pitched pretty well. He kept them in the game. It was the bullpen that blew it. So, I don't know. I think they'll do pretty well if they do come back. I'm hoping at least.
You know, and Gio, sorry, Rick.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And every loss, on the Harper point, every first-round loss gets it closer to somebody getting in Harper's ear, and maybe he might think of coming back and saying, do you really want to keep going back to that franchise that never gets you past the first round?
Well, you know, I don't think it's the same case as Stanton in Miami, who desperately wants out. And don't forget, after Gio gave up that home run early in Game 2, he composed himself. It didn't rattle him. He got rattled in the fourth when they couldn't produce anything, but he survived the first hit against his ego extremely well in Game 2, which should give confidence if he is the Game 5 starter.
And that was his first time pitching in a while. He pitched the last game of the season, then pitched on extra rest in that Game 2, and sometimes extra rest helps you, but sometimes it can also hurt you. So maybe he goes out on this normal rest for Game 5 and pitches better than he did in Game 2. We'll have to see. Yeah. What did you guys think about Scherzer today? I know he went 6 1/3, only allowed the 1 hit, although he did give up 1 run after Solis came in on 3 walks and 7 strikeouts. And you really didn't know what you were going to get from him coming off the hamstring issue. But me personally, I was pretty impressed with what I saw.
I thought he was great. I thought every pitch with him was working. He made maybe one mistake to Schwarber that went 1,000 feet foul to Ohio. But really, besides that, his changeup was working. His breaking ball was working. He got the fastball to 97 to Schwarber at one point. I loved what he did, even though I didn't like that he faced Contreras. I liked that he got that strikeout and got him to chase a high fastball. Did everything he could have asked for. Like I said before, he exceeded any expectation Ron and I had after Game 2. We would have signed up for 2 runs over 6 and get the heck out. Nobody thought a no-hitter into the 7th, and that's just the gamer he is. And he had a little bit of pressure because his 2 starts last year weren't great in October. He hasn't had a postseason win in a few years, but it's not his fault that this team can't score runs for either of their 2 aces, and it's really a shame, and it's embarrassing that they can have 2 aces throw no-hitters deep in the game and they can't win either game.
Yeah, if you were a casual fan and knew the name Max Scherzer but weren't familiar with MRIs and stuff like that, you just thought it was a normal Scherzer start. I mean, he went out there and did exactly what he had to do. He threw 90 no-hit pitches through 6 innings. Can't do any better than that. I mean, walked 3, didn't really hurt him that much. Had the double play at one point to get him out of the 6th early. Yeah, you just can't do any better than that. We can argue whether he should have started the 7th or not, but that's water under the bridge at this point. As far as what expectations, I'm with Ricky. 2 runs in 6 innings. You take that and hope that's enough. And he well exceeded that.
And it should be enough. Most days it should be enough. And you can say the same thing for Quintana. For a postseason where every pitcher practically that's had a postseason debut laid a giant egg, he was great. He got the ground balls he wanted. He got the fastball where he wanted it. This is the guy who almost no-hit the United States in the World Baseball Classic in March. The big experience does not faze him. And really, he deserved a win if Kyle Schwarber could actually play left field correctly.
All right, so we'll take a look at what's going on around the league right now. Earlier today, the Houston Astros beat the Boston Red Sox 5-4, so that was that eliminated the Red Sox, and the Astros will be moving on to the ALCS. And then the other American League game just got underway. It's the Cleveland Indians and New York Yankees, and the Yankees are currently leading 2-0 in the bottom of the 2nd. Todd Frazier got an RBI double, and Aaron Hicks got an RBI single. So that's a good game early, especially. I'm sure Ricky's happy.
So far, from what I'm reading on that game, Bauer's curveball has been flat. He's pitching on 3 days rest. It's not the same when you pitch on 3 days rest. Severino's come out and looked electric. And if this series gets back to Cleveland after what happened in Game 2 for the Yankees, they're playing with house money. They've hit Kluber before, and they have CC going into Game 5. So if you're the Yankees, if they can hang on tonight, all the pressure is on Cleveland on Wednesday night.
You gotta. If you do get past Cleveland, you gotta like your chances against Houston. Houston didn't show me anything pitching wise. They would get out to huge leads off the Red Sox sack of boiled potatoes that they threw out there for starters in this series, and Houston survived the Red Sox in 4. I mean, you got to be liking your chances if you actually do get past Cleveland.
They've been doing this good, all things considered, with Aaron Judge having a horrible series. You would think eventually he's going to find a way to hit something, and he had the beautiful leaping catch last night that prevented Hampel from catching that ball. I'm glad he didn't catch it. I could save that for an off-air discussion. But really, besides that, I think Girardi saved his job. I do think if there was one postseason manager the Nats would want, or fans would want, would be Girardi. I don't think he's going anywhere. I think the Yankees want to keep him. And I would be shocked if he got fired. I think they weren't supposed to win the series. He made one mistake. It happens. Every manager makes mistakes. Dusty's well familiar with making mistakes. But he deserves it. He deserves to stay. And I thought what they did last night, Tanaka was great. Bird off of Miller was fantastic. And I think they played well. I think the problem with Houston, though, they don't hit Keuchel well. And I think the problem for Houston in a best of 7 is they don't have a third starter they can trust. Peacock was not good yesterday. Charlie Morton was terrible. He's just inconsistent today. And they used McCullers really in long relief Game 3, which hurt them today. They're going to need better starting pitching outside of Verlander and Keuchel. They can't ride those guys for 7 games. They won't last.
And then, what's going good for the Yankees, too, is with Severino pitching the way he is tonight. He had a fantastic regular season, and obviously he didn't get the results he wanted in the wild card game. But I think now that he got that his first postseason start under his belt, you're going to see him pitch better as he is in the first 2 innings tonight.
We forget this. Severino's only 23, and he had a heck of a season. That it was really just he was too amped up, and so you got to learn sometimes through playoff experience. The same way Judge is learning, the same way Sanchez and Bird and all these kids are learning. The more games they get, the better off they'll be. And it's early, but for the most part, against a really good lineup that, let's be honest, Cleveland's missing Encarnacion badly right now, and they need him back.
And then the final game for tonight will be the Dodgers playing at the Diamondbacks at 10 o'clock. The Diamondbacks are down 2-0, so they're fighting to win 3 in a row, but they have their ace and Zach Greinke pitching tonight at home against Yu Darvish. So that'll be a fun game to keep an eye on. And if the Nationals are able to come back and win this series in 5, they'll be playing the winner of that series. So
keep an eye on this one. LA has dominated these first 2 games. They're getting consistent hitting from their lineup. Yasiel Puig's been great. Arizona really cannot find any consistent starting pitching, and I think LA would love nothing more than to stick it to Greinke and win this game. The problem is Yu Darvish, we don't know what he's going to be on the postseason stage. There maybe isn't much pressure on him with a 2-0 lead. Expecting Arizona to be pumped up, but LA's gone to Jansen for multiple outs the other night, and he was great. Arizona's come back late in these games, but if LA's been getting out to big leads, if that happens again tonight, the Dodgers will sweep, and that'll make the Nats play at 8 o'clock tomorrow night, which might be better than playing it at 4:30 in an afternoon at Wrigley Field when you never know where the ball might be going.
That is true. And Dave Roberts is showing himself to be a pretty capable postseason manager.
Oh, he's great at it. We saw that last year. I mean, like we always have said, Dave Roberts just made aggressive moves that paid off. I mean, he has the trust of his players, and they once again look like the team that won 100 games, and this is with Cody Bellinger not really hitting and Corey Seager not really hitting. It's been Chris Taylor, Yasiel Puig, a little bit of Justin Turner mixed in. Logan Forsythe's been good. Their lineup is deep as anybody, and the only question for them would be, can they get anybody besides Clayton Kershaw to pitch well in a big spot? We got a couple. Our friend here, RK Jr., tweeted us, is it possible to go with Murphy batting second?
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. But again, it doesn't really matter who hits second as long as the person at the leadoff spot has to produce something.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, Murphy could hit second. You could put Rendon second if you thought that would be the case. But if no one's getting on in front of these people, it really doesn't matter.
And I think the thing with Harper batting second as opposed to Murphy is Harper has a little bit better speed, and you'd like to have some speed at the top of the lineup. So obviously you're not going to bat Murphy like lead off, and so his speed isn't crucial. But I do like that Harper has some speed in the 2-hole.
And plus, if you hit Murphy second, then you have to kind of mix up your lineup because Dusty loves to go left, right, left, sort of prevent Madden from going to Dunsing or going to Montgomery or one of their left-handers in a big spot. Well, he hasn't done that. I mean, Dunsing's been warming up the entire series and never gets in a game. It's really been Edwards, it's been Strope, and it's been Davis. Montgomery only had the couple batters in the 8th inning in game 2. So it depends. The problem that the Nats are having, they can't get to that middle relief. They need a big inning early just to make Madden have to think. I mean, really the one move they made him think on, they got a run off of it because Zimmerman was 3 for 9 off Strope.
Right.
That was a perfect move for the Nationals. They need to score early and get 2-3 on the board. And maybe you got Arrieta to do it because I know RK Jr. sent us another one where Arrieta can't hold anybody on, and they need to get people on and make Arrieta think. Just these starters has really been the cool part about this series. Every other series, the offenses have dominated. The starting pitching's been great. You look at, I think it's like Cubs got like a 0.6, Nats got like a 1 point something ERA, and the next closest is Cleveland at like 3.5. Although that'll go up because Judge made it 4-0 just now, but that will go up eventually.
My cat's tired of all this talk, as you can see there, but she left the room, so we can continue. No, you're right. I mean, both teams have pitched well, and both the bullpens have pitched well. When you're talking, 1-0, 2-1 games here, it just I sound like a broken record, but it just makes that margin, a minuscule margin of error, even down in the microscopic. So yeah, I mean, to bolster Ricky's point, you got to make Madden think. If you're not pressuring Madden, and the Cubs really haven't been pressured in any of these 3 games, it's that one inning, then yeah, you're gonna win, or in the Nats case, you're gonna lose.
Ryan Zimmerman said from Colco, give Colco credit. He's found it a couple quotes. Ryan Zimmerman said we've been in this situation before. 2 it's not ideal, but winning 2 in a row isn't a record. So I guess you like what Zim says there. And Mark Zuckerman caught up with Scherzer, who said it was a 50-50 call to stay in the game or not, defended Dusty's decision to remove him there. So any questions of if Max wasn't happy, and that was probably the one question with the loss, was if Max would say something, and Max isn't going to say anything. He has so much respect for his manager. And I think he even knew, as great as he tries to stay in that game, he was coming out whether he liked it or not, just because of what he even said. He said I can get through 100 pitches. That's really it. So not a surprise from Max there.
Scherzer's not about to start throwing people under a bus.
No. And he could, because he's the one that'll be there the longest, and he makes the money, but he chose not to.
Right.
All right, we'll take a look at what went up on the site today. We had Ricky write 5 storylines to watch in the game today.
That was it.
Yeah.
I nailed the Albert Almora one, sadly. I was hoping not to, but yeah, pretty much everything I came to fruition. And I think the one question is, I was talking with somebody on Twitter. I don't like the narrative. The narrative is there on Dusty, and I want how they come out tomorrow, I think determines whether Dusty has a job next year. You hate to say that. I get it. I don't know, Ron, how persuasive the Nats front office is, but if they have to keep hearing about first round exit, and they don't like paying managers. You've seen that they don't like paying managers. I wonder if something will get them to change their mind. I hate it. I don't want it to happen. I think it's terrible that Dusty keeps getting raked through the coals when he does a good job, and he was in a lose-lose situation tonight. But the same thing with Girardi in Game 3 for the Yankees. The Nats have to come out and get a win for him.
Well,
sad way it is.
I do think that's probably it for John Farrell. with the Red Sox. I mean, they did come out and fight well in games 3 and 4. And to his credit, Farrell did today what Dusty should have done Friday night and got tossed. Because the umpiring in that series was not something you would put in a time capsule, at least behind the plate anyway. But we've talked about this before. I don't think the learners are rash to public outcries, which I think may save Dusty. But because there's no extension in place and we're on the verge of having yet another season end prematurely, you can certainly understand why fans aren't happy. And because they don't do in-season extensions, it kind of leaves, as I talked about a week ago today, as a matter of fact, it just makes it too much of a distraction. Everyone in the organization seems to be happy with Dusty Baker, from the ownership and the front office, and universally inside the game of baseball, he's beloved. But to the point that Ricky is correctly making,
there's going to be a scapegoat if they lose. I don't know who it is.
But wouldn't that be
Dusty? It could be Rick Shue. I mean, we talked about it. Yeah, Ron, you and I talked about it, and you said, well, the Nats had their best offense in franchise history. How could you fire the hitting coach?
Well,
the offense isn't doing anything in the postseason. That's what matters. And Rick Shue was one of the holdovers from the Matt Williams regime, along with Bob Henley. And you have what's going on with Chuck Jones right now with his legal situation. I mean, that may keep Shue his job, but I could see Rick Shue being a scapegoat, and it would be sad. But I think with this kind of team winning 97 and bowing out in round 1, there'd have to be a scapegoat.
If you lose Dusty, then you probably lose Maddox and Davey Lopes and Chris Spire, who've all done tremendous jobs with this team.
And you can't have that much turnover with a franchise. I mean, there's so much coaching staff turnovers, and at some point you got to keep things consistent. I know that because Maddox doesn't want to be a manager. I don't think he'd be a very good one. I've seen good pitching coaches turn into bad managers. I'm trying to think of an example that would happen in recent years, and I can't. But trust me, Ray Miller, who, if some of you older people, did he manage the Orioles at one point? I mean, he's a tremendous pitching coach, but that doesn't necessarily translate well into all aspects of the game. And so you wouldn't want to put Mike Maddox in that. Chris Spire is older than Dusty Baker, and Davey Lopes is older than Chris Spire. I mean, they're both in their 70s. So, I think the most unfortunate thing with the Jones situation, outside of the fact that he's probably done for a while, is that he probably was going to be, a manager in waiting. And
Chuck
so,
Jones?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And so
Morosi talked about it. So, yeah, I remember John Morosi writing about it about a month or two ago.
And so if you don't have anyone really in the organization to promote, then just go with it for one more year and then see if you can kind of craft someone to groom for that job for 2019 or 2020.
The next guy you get will be sabermetrics and looks at the binder, and proverbial binder. I know Girardi probably is the only one that has a binder, but proverbial looks at all the stats and goes off the stats. The one thing you love about Dusty, he goes with his gut, goes with what's working.
But isn't that what they had with Matt Williams?
Pretty much. And I think Dusty goes to Perez because he saw Perez get Rizzo out in game 2, and he got so much grief about Perez pitching game 1. Then why wasn't Perez pitching to Rizzo instead of Madsen in game 1? Dusty can't win. You can't win with these guys. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, because you look at what the Cubs offense, besides Bryant and Rizzo, the only other RBI came from Albert Almora and Wilson Contreras. Their offense isn't doing much better, but because the Nats have the narrative, the Nats have the pressure, they're going to get all the talk. The Cubs are the ones playing loose, playing with a lot of fun.
They won the World Series last year. They're playing with house money.
Right. They weren't, and they had a bad regular season on their standard. They know it. I mean, but they've been great since the Quintana deal, and they're going to go in playing with house money and playing aggressive. It's up to the Nats to match it, or they'll be going home.
Drew, what's the chat saying? This has been a pretty interesting conversation. What are they saying about it?
Yeah, Gio Joker said if the Nats fire Dusty, then who gets it next year? He said Mike Maddox, hope that Girardi gets canned. And then he also said, I'll put it this way, Dusty made a managerial mistake leaving Max in to start the 7th. However, the offense shouldn't have put him in, or shouldn't have put him in that position. and there's no way they should fire Maddox. The Nats have the second best pitching in the postseason right now. Firing Maddox would be a grave error. If anyone, the hitting coach should be canned.
Nobody's going to fire Mike Maddox. It's really, to Ron's point, it's just if Baker leaves, then Maddox probably leaves because Baker brought him in. Maddox is fine. I mean, pitching's been fantastic.
I don't want people to think that I was advocating for Maddox to get fired. I think usually if you go through and make a managerial change, the manager will decide who they want to keep. Maybe Henley was kept.
I'm going to stick up for Tanner Roark tomorrow. I think his second half has been good. He had a good outing against the Cubs 2 months ago where he held into 2 runs over 6+. He's going to pitch near his hometown. He grew up a Cubs fan. I think that'll at least keep him a little bit loose. He's pitched in the playoffs before. He had the good start against Japan in the WBC, which will help him in that big stage. The only worry you have with Roark is he relies a lot on that curveball, and you just got to hope the curveball doesn't stay up like Gio's did to Rizzo over the weekend. I mean, that's really the only worry I have because he paints the corners well, uses the changeup. And I think there's more confidence what he might do than what Arrieta might do. Arrieta is the unknown here. I think it's more of the unknown than what Scherzer was because Arrieta's been out longer.
Yeah, but there's absolutely no pressure on Arrieta tomorrow.
And we know how good he could be in October.
Right. And getting back to Girardi, I remember having this conversation with Ricky back in January. You know, if Dusty didn't come back, Girardi would be the guy I want. But as Girardi's not going to get fired, and the Yankees have turned what probably should have been a sweep in both of the American League Championship Series into fighting chances. I mean, the Yankees are still 4-0. In great shape now of forcing this back to Cleveland for a deciding Game 5 on Wednesday. Girardi's not going anywhere. And so there isn't anyone out there in the free agency market managerial-wise, unless they take the chance with a first-time manager, that strikes me as someone I want to take. And Pete Buchanan? No. Don Mattingly is probably the only person in Miami that's going to survive all that regime change down there. You know, I don't think you'd want him anyway. Terry Collins couldn't manage the Mets with all their injury problems. How is he going to manage the Nats? There isn't, you can count the number of great managers maybe on one hand. And Madden's not leaving. Francona's not leaving. Girardi's not leaving. And I don't want anything to do with Brett Ausmus.
I mean, the first-time manager you maybe want would be Alex Cora.
There's some good ones out there.
Cora played in DC. I mean, that would be maybe the logical one, but I don't know if Cora's leaving as the bench coach in Houston.
But I don't think cleaning house coaching-wise, maybe with the exception of Shu, who wasn't a Dusty hire to begin with, is the answer.
Yeah, I think Dusty's back next year.
I think he deserves to be back next year. I mean, my goodness. But
I think we all agree. Let's get that out there. We all agree Dusty should come back. It's the fear of what the front office might hear and the fact that there's no extension, and it appears they're going to wait out and make Dusty come to them. Dusty came to them. Dusty took less to manage here. They could have hired Bud Black. And Dusty's done everything that the team could ask for. Give the man a chance at 2,000 wins.
Even Paul Molitor's going to go back to Minnesota.
He's got a 3-year extension.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Today?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, all the ones that you would think about are intriguing are in jobs already. And I don't want to see the same 19 names recycled all the time. I mean, this is not the time to be bringing back Jimmy Leland and all that. But as I said, yes, Dusty is not a great in-game tactician, which hurts the team to a degree, but there's really nothing in this series that you can sit there and say the Nats lost this because he did that.
Yeah, kind of coming back to tonight's game, desperate times call for desperate measures sometimes. And Seth made a great point that I think definitely be a feasible plan for tomorrow. He said, bring Cubby's crib on tomorrow. The Nats always win when he is on.
We have talked to them, Seth. They refuse to come on during games of what happened the 2 times we've had them on this year. We might have them on in between 4 and 5. We might do like a Game 5 preview with them. But I talk with Cubby's crib every day. They're good people. They're not coming on again, and they don't want to come on again for a post game. Plus, I don't think we want them on if the Cubs win tomorrow either.
No. I know that we'll have at least 2 more podcasts this postseason. but that's about the only certain thing.
Yeah. Judo said that we're the scapegoat for not bringing on Cubby's crib, and he said Jason Worth for 2018 Nats manager.
I think Worth still wants to play.
I think Worth. Yeah, I see Worth as a DH someplace. You know, I think Jason's kind of. I don't want this to sound mean.
To be honest, and it's something I've been hating. I know that you finished that, Ron. He's kind of turning into the scapegoat for this, and it's not fair.
That's not fair at all.
Stop, blame Jason Worth doesn't deserve half of you guys because you keep blaming him for everything.
There's a lot of fans, and we've talked about this before, who were upset because Henley sent him home in the 6th inning of Game 5 last year.
He made a mistake. Big whoop. He's still done so much for your team. He does the little things well that everybody else does. Nobody else does the little things like he does. Maybe he doesn't play well defensively, but nobody they have in left field can play well defensively, and you're not going to put Goodwin Cold out there. You're not going to put Robles out there.
No.
Just stop hitting this all like he's got a bench Worth. Okay, then let's see trade bench. That's what I said earlier.
Worth does not strike me as having the temperament and personality to be a manager. Daniel Murphy, I think, does. But that's not happening he's not going to be an active player manager. But, I hope Worth stays in the game after his playing days are done. But he does not strike me as a managerial type.
I think he'd be kind of a Matt Williams type of manager.
Andrew Simon had this from MLB.com. The Nats have lost their last 9 postseason games by a combined 12 runs.
I mean,
it'll be close. It'll be close tomorrow. I mean, 14 of the last 17 between these two teams have been 3 runs or fewer. There's not going to be a blowout tomorrow. I'd be shocked if there was. It's going to be, again, it comes down to which manager, which team does the little things correctly. And today the Cubs did that. They managed that 8th inning perfectly. Move the runner over with the bunt, get him over with a bloop base hit. That's how you win games in October. These other series you're watching, those are anomalies. You don't normally win postseason games that way.
Yeah.
So I think that about covers it for tonight. It was a tough game, but there's always tomorrow, at least for now. There is still a tomorrow. We have to keep that in mind. And if the Nationals go out and play well tomorrow, coming back to Nationals Park on Thursday for a Game 5. So there is always that to hope for. Just tomorrow, like we talked about a little bit earlier, Jake Arrieta's pitching for the Cubs, and he's kind of like Scherzer. He's got the hamstring issue. He says he's 100%, but we really don't know what he's going to be able to do tomorrow. And with Lackey coming behind him, the Nationals have hit Lackey really well. Tomorrow could be a big game for the Nats. And if you win tomorrow, you think hopefully coming back to D.C., you have a little momentum after the win, and you're coming back to your home park where I know they haven't played as well at home, but it is still your home park. So I think that could help them. And yeah, what do you guys think about Game 4 tomorrow and the possibility of a Game 5?
They've all been close. No one's been blown out. The Nats could have easily swept this series or have been swept in this series. I think you treat it like Game 5. So if you win Game 5, it's Groundhog Day, and it was kind of appropriate with Bill Murray in the stands. And you wake up, you fly home, and you play Game 5 again. And so you have to treat it. You have to treat it like Game 5, and so you'll see things that you didn't necessarily have to see. But if it comes down to, look, they have to get base runners on early in the game and not have them. They have to score first. If they score first, I like their chances. If it's still in the 6th or 7th inning and it's a 1-1 game, the later it goes, that's it's the last. Cubs fans willed into that one today. So, but it's one game at a time now.
They need the Jake Arrieta to be what he was in the first half. His second half numbers before the injury were really good. 2.28 ERA over 12 starts. He had a 2.90 ERA at home. And again, I think it really determines if LA wins tonight, this game is at 8 o'clock tomorrow. If Arizona wins, this game is at 5:30. And that could play a huge factor with shadows and anything of that nature, how this game is decided and how the wind goes in Chicago. That's always an X factor. But again, like one of our people tweeted us earlier, I think the Nets have to get people on. They have to force the issue. And like Ron said, they have to get a couple runs early. I mean, they have to get as loose as possible early in this game. I think you have to throw Sean Doolittle multiple outs tomorrow. I don't think you have a choice. I know he hasn't done it, only done it once this year, but you're seeing all these teams do it. I think the Dusty's got to do it. And I think, again, there's no excuse why, unless Roark's throwing a gem, that Steven Strasburg should not pitch tomorrow.
And also, as far as the law firm is concerned, if they win tomorrow, there's a day off. You get a day of rest. So even if you decided that you needed to get as many as 6 innings from those 3, they have Thursday off.
Here's the thing. At the very least, all 3 have to pitch.
Right. They should have all pitched tonight, but they didn't. But so yeah, you don't worry about Thursday until you can guarantee a Thursday. And right now, it's all about tomorrow.
Roark 4, Strasburg 2, Kinsler, Madsen, Doolittle.
That would be the ideal.
Plan for that right now.
That would be ideal.
The thing with Doolittle is he didn't pitch today, and like you guys said, there is an off day if you win tomorrow. So he is capable of throwing 2 days in a row, and maybe since he didn't pitch today, and they had the travel day yesterday, so he obviously didn't pitch then either, then tomorrow if he goes a couple innings, it's almost the same as pitching a few days, except you don't have to warm up multiple times because we see them come in, even if they have a quick inning and only throw a handful of pitches, they warmed up a lot in the bullpen. So just the fact that he'll only have to warm up once, I think that might even pitching tomorrow for multiple innings might not be as taxing as pitching back-to-back days.
Yeah, if they have the lead after 7 innings, he has to throw the last 6 outs.
I'm trying to see here real quick if Doolittle has pitched in the postseason before. I want to see if any of them have been multiple inning situations.
He's only the closer the 1 year, which was his All-Star year in 2014.
Doolittle pitched an inning and 2/3 in 2013. 1, struck out 3. He pitched 2 innings in the wild card game, but blew the save. And that's about it. Everything else was an inning.
I mean, I think he could do it no problem. And really, like you guys said, tomorrow is a must-win. So pull out all the stops and just do everything you can to bring the series back to D.C. on Thursday.
Yeah.
All right, so we'd appreciate it if you'd give this video a like and subscribe to us on YouTube. If you'd like us on Facebook, or it's just District on Deck. And if you'd follow us on Twitter at District on Deck. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter, you can follow me at DrewRD98. And how can they follow you guys?
At Ron Juckett.
At Rickinator, that's R-I-C-K, the letter I, Nader like in Terminator, and 3 5s.
He'll be back.
All right,
depends. If they don't win, I'm not. No, never mind.
All right. So thank you for watching that, even after that rough game. Hopefully they'll go out tomorrow and do a little better, bring the series back to DC for Game 5. So from Ron, Ricky, and everyone on the District on Deck staff, I'm Drew Douglas. Thank you for watching, and have a great night, everybody.
Good night.